Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources, articles, research, and notes and distill them into the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
That's right.
Our mission is to give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed with, surprising facts and just enough humor to keep you hooked.
Indeed. Each deep dive is custom tailored. We serve as your expert guides to help you understand what is most important in the material you've shared. We really aim for those aha moments.
Making sure you gain knowledge quickly but thoroughly.
Exactly, without ever feeling overwhelmed.
And today, we've got a truly comprehensive deep dive lined up. Think of it as a crucial update on the world's pulse as of today, Thursday, August 21st, 2025.
It's a big one.
We'll be exploring the intricate tapestry of global geopolitical and geoeconomic shifts, diving into current conflicts, and bringing you up to speed on significant domestic developments. I'll be guiding us through the geoeconomic landscape first.
And I'll then take the lead on the political and military conflict briefing. It's a busy world out there, and we're here to help you navigate it all.
Okay, let's unpack this then with a detailed geoeconomic briefing. Let's start with China's relentless pursuit of gold and its broader economic strategies. The Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has been accumulating gold with, well, an almost insatiable appetite.
It's quite tough.
They view it as a critical tool for national security.
Yeah, and what's really foundational here is that their primary motivations for this massive gold hoard are deeply strategic.
Yeah.
It's about bolstering the yuan, sure, but it's also fundamentally about reducing dependence on the U.S. dollar.
Right.
And preparing for potential Western sanctions, especially, in the event of an invasion of Taiwan.
So this isn't merely about financial stability in the usual sense.
No, it's a profound move for geopolitical resilience, basically insulating their economy from external leverage.
And their role in the global gold market is huge. China's been the world's largest gold producer since 2007, and since 2013, the largest consumer.
But that's just the official story, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's just the reported stuff. What becomes truly compelling, I think, lies in the hitting purchases. A September 2024 Goldman Sachs report estimated Chinese central bank gold purchases were as much as 60 tons higher than what they officially declared.
60 tons higher. Wow.
And a gold analyst at Money Metals goes even further. He argues that in 2024, the central bank covertly bought a staggering 570 tons of gold.
570 tons.
Yeah. This suggests China is secretly sitting on more than twice what has been publicly admitted. This sort of clandestine acquisition really underscores China's profound distrust of the existing global financial architecture.
Right. It signals a long-term strategic pivot, trying to insulate its economy from Western leverage, especially if something happens with Taiwan.
This relentless accumulation, it inevitably raises an important question, though. How much is enough?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the multi-billion-dollar question.
Yeah. Well, even with these massive acquisitions, a National People's Congress deputy argued back in March that China's gold reserves are still insufficient and should be increased further.
So the push continues. Their long-term strategy certainly seems to be one of persistent, almost aggressive accumulation.
And that relentless pursuit, it extends far beyond their own borders. The CCP's quest for gold leads them to, well, overtly support illegal mining operations worldwide.
This isn't just a localized problem, though.
Not at all. It's a sprawling global network. Operations spanning from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Ghana, French Guiana, Papua, Nigeria.
Goodness. So the CCP's strategic resource hunger seems to transcend national boundaries and, well, legal frameworks.
Absolutely.
The situation in Ghana you mentioned, that's a particularly stark illustration of this global web. The country has deported thousands of illegal Chinese gold miners, only for them to routinely find their way back.
Yeah, I read about that. There was this figure, the Chinese queen of illegal gold mining, Aisha.
That's the one. Arrested multiple times between 2018 and 2022, yet she consistently returned, even managed to acquire a Ghanaian national ID card.
Incredible.
And Ghanaian lawmakers openly complain about the Chinese government's complicity in the environmental destruction. They highlight Beijing's notable lack of cooperativeness in cracking down on these operations.
Which suggests maybe tacit approval from Beijing.
Or explicit, yeah, it certainly indicates a pattern.
And it's definitely not just Ghana. Countries like Indonesia are making similar complaints about China's uncooperativeness. The Washington Post reported many operations are directly led by Chinese private investors with minimal oversight,
leading to serious allegation that Beijing is basically permitting the ransacking of gold deposits abroad.
Exactly. And a French defense think tank, the Foundation for Strategic Research, they reported in 2023 that Chinese involvement in illegal gold mining is part of a global context of resource capture and predation encouraged or facilitated by the Chinese government.
So not just rogue individuals, it paints a picture of a state-facilitated pattern of resource extraction.
Yeah, precisely.
And the devastating environmental and social impact of these illicit operations, it just cannot be overstated. They use heavy machinery, crushers, excavators, rivaling industrial mines.
And toxic chemicals, right? Mercury, cyanide.
Exactly. Leaving behind what one source chillingly described as trails of utter devastation. Environmental scars far deeper than, brief operations might suggest.
There was that example, Jolito Comandus, the president of the Mahdi Farmers Association.
Yes, recounting the struggle to maintain his community's livelihood after their main irrigation source became completely unusable because of this mining activity. The long-term cost to local communities and ecosystems is just immense.
And the implications stretch even further, beyond just the environment.
How so?
Well, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime warned back in May that organized crime is embedding itself deeply in these illicit gold supply chains.
Posing a serious global threat by enabling drug cartels, terrorist organizations, mercenary groups.
Right. In response, former President Trump designated gold among minerals vital to the U.S. earlier this year, and he invoked emergency powers to boost domestic critical minerals production.
So the U.S. is clearly aware of the strategic importance of gold. It sounds like they're preparing for a new kind of gold rush, driven by national security and resource sovereignty.
She was like, yeah.
Now, beyond just getting raw materials, China is also grappling with a significant internal economic challenge: persistent overcapacity.
Ah, yes, the ghost cities and redundant factories.
Exactly. For decades, their economic model intensely focused on building and expanding high-speed rail, solar panels, EVs. But that same relentless drive has produced substantial waste.
An entire industry is plagued by oversupply.
Precisely. This problem has now emerged as a major structural challenge for Beijing.
And they're trying to tackle it, right? This anti-involution campaign.
Yes, they're accelerating efforts to rein in this excess supply, framing it as anti-involution. The campaign aims to curb what they call destructive competition,
Where companies flood the market with basically identical products, sparking price wars that just kill profits.
You got it. The concept itself, involution, borrowed from anthropology, it aptly describes relentless effort without meaningful progress, acceleration without a destination.
It's basically a race to the bottom where everyone loses.
Pretty much. And this situation fundamentally raises that important question. How can genuine healthy competition really exist under such distorted conditions?
Because unlike a truly free market, many Chinese companies are heavily backed by local governments.
Exactly. Massive subsidies, protection from failure. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology has vowed to curb disorderly low-price competition and promote an orderly exit for outdated capacity, starting with solar.
And other state bodies are involved too.
6 key state bodies have jointly pledged tighter project regulation and stricter quality standards. It really highlights Beijing's dilemma. How do you foster innovation and efficiency when decades of state-backed growth created these deep inefficiencies?
But it's not easy, right? These top-down directives aren't as effective as they hoped.
No, especially now. While these efforts recall earlier supply-side reforms in steel and coal, back in 2015, 2018.
The newer industries are different, like solar, EVs, batteries.
Right, they're dominated by private enterprises. Morgan Stanley economists noted this environment specifically requires incentives, not directives, to consolidate supply.
Makes sense, like the solar industry example.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Chinese firms now produce nearly twice as many solar panels as the entire world can absorb. In polysilicon, the top manufacturers tried to form a cartel to stabilize prices.
But it didn't work.
Success is far from assured, precisely because local governments keep resisting closures that threaten jobs and revenue. They directly undermine any market-driven consolidation.
It's a striking irony, isn't it? Washington embraces more state-guided industrial policy.
While Beijing, with its much more state-directed economy, is trying to steer firms toward market-based consolidation and profit, things we usually associate with Western capitalism.
Dan Wang, the author of Breakneck China, observed that China's builders thrived on expansion, subsidies, competition.
But this very approach created industries where few firms actually earn sustainable profits. It historically prioritized scale over profitability.
And according to Michael Teddes at Peking University, the underlying problem is still there.
He argues these current measures won't make a fundamental difference. They address symptoms, not the root cause.
Which
A
is?
decades-old economic model built around supply-side growth at the expense of domestic demand. This imbalance has been relabeled over the years, rebalancing, dual circulation, excess capacity, now involution, but it fundamentally persists.
So Pettis says policymakers need to stop encouraging new capacity.
Essentially, yes, which means lower real GDP growth targets and much less pressure for investment in manufacturing and infrastructure. A big shift.
Okay, and finally, on China's internal dynamics, there's this deepening of party control through a new social governance model.
Right. The CCP is extending its reach further into everyday life. It's blending Mao-era mobilization with digital surveillance and party-led service delivery. There's a merits report on this called Serving the People by Controlling Them.
Serving by controlling. Sounds about right.
Under Xi Jinping, the CCP is systematically building a larger, more resourceful party-state apparatus, expanding its footprint across private companies, urban neighborhoods, rural communities.
Even creating new institutions.
Yeah, like the Central Society Work Department in 2023, specifically targeting sectors that previously had some autonomy.
And this strategy fuses service delivery with control.
Exactly. Local officials provide improved community services, which looks good on the surface, but these efforts also reinforce compliance with party rules and laws,
Plus patriotic campaigns, political education, party building.
all actively promoted to prevent competing worldviews and align citizens firmly with the CCP's vision. It's a comprehensive, deeply integrated approach to societal management.
Ensuring everything connects back to the party somehow.
And at the grassroots level, methods like grid management and the Fengqiao experience emphasize constant neighborhood monitoring, volunteer mobilization, and self-correction among citizens.
To keep things stable and handle grievances locally before they escalate?
Precisely. But beyond just social peace, the ultimate goal is to prepare society for struggle. Their word in the context of economic slowdown and rising geopolitical friction.
So citizens and entrepreneurs are called on to contribute, even sacrifice, for the collective good.
Increasingly so. The Merrick's report concludes this fusion of welfare, ideology, and coercion underpins the CCP's authoritarian resilience. It embeds itself in daily life, tightens control, and cultivates long-term stability in an uncertain world.
So bringing it all together, what does this mean for you, our listener? China's actions gold, economic management, social control, they all point to one big goal: boosting internal resilience and expanding external influence in a really volatile world.
Which definitely raises the question, how do other major economies react? How do they grapple with such a comprehensive, strategically driven national strategy?
That's a perfect transition because we need to connect this to the bigger picture. Let's look at global economic indicators and ongoing trade tensions, starting with Japan.
Okay, Japan.
Their exports posted their sharpest decline since early 2021 in July, down 2.6% by value from a year earlier, which was actually worse than economists expected.
That's a significant sign. The U.S. tariffs are really starting to bite, aren't they?
Seems so. The downturn was mainly driven by cars, auto parts, and steel sectors heavily exposed to Washington's duties.
But export volumes actually went up slightly, 1.2%.
Yeah, which strongly suggests Japanese firms are cutting prices to keep market share, basically absorbing the tariff costs. They're eating into their margins to stay competitive.
And the broader impact. Imports fell too.
Substantially, down 7.5%, with double-digit drops in things like crude oil, coal, LNG. Japan swung to a trade deficit of about $810 million US dollars.
Ouch. So these weak figures put real pressure on policymakers, raises questions about Japan sustaining its recent growth, especially after 5 straight quarters of expansion.
Particularly with fragile domestic consumption. Prolonged export weakness could easily reverse that trend.
And those U.S. tariffs were steep. 25% on cars and parts, 10% on most other goods.
Yep. And steel duty doubled to 50% in June. Considering cars and parts are about a third of Japan's U.S. exports, the impact is massive. Toyota warned it could cut $9.5 billion from its earnings.
Wow. And it's not just a Japan problem, is it? Shipments to China slid 3.5%, exports to Europe dropped 3.4%.
Plus, the yen strengthened 8.9% in July, adding more headwinds. It really points to a globally synchronized economic slowdown.
And this complicates things for the Bank of Japan, too. Governor Katsuya signaled caution ahead of the September meeting. Tariff risks are a key factor for future rate hikes.
An NLI Research Institute economist even forecast the economy will likely contract in Q3 due to falling exports. He said the fog of tariff uncertainty will take time to clear.
And the underlying issue driving this demand destruction is this pervasive consumer stress, isn't it? Shrinking paychecks, rising bills, student loans.
It's hitting everyone, even high net worth Americans seeing rising delinquencies on credit cards and auto loans. It points to a major consumer crisis,
Compounded by the front running of tariffs, importing stuff early, leading to massive inventory buildup because demand isn't there.
which causes deflationary pressure.
Mhm.
Companies like TJ Maxx snap up excess merchandise, while Target struggles with discretionary goods.
Okay, so that's Japan. What about Europe? Their economy seems to be stagnating too.
Right. The ECB says it's done cutting rates. The deposit rate is at 2%, but the European and global economy is not actually cooperating.
GDP was barely positive, 0.1% in Q2, after a stronger Q1.
Yeah, and that's seen as payback from an artificial high late last year and early this year, probably due to front-loading activity before tariffs hit.
And employment has flatlined across Europe. Not mass layoffs, but not enough new jobs either.
Exactly. Unemployment is piling up.
Industrial production gives a stark picture too. After being weak in late 2024, it soared parabolically early this year.
Which some policymakers credited to rate cuts.
But our sources suggest it was mostly that artificial distortion. And now it's sinking parabolically, heading even lower than late last year.
So central bankers are in a tough spot. Rate cuts look like admitting error.
They seem paralyzed, pausing cuts at 2% to keep some latitude for future cuts if things get worse. It feels like a psychological game signaling they still have tools, even if the impact is limited.
And this whole QE-QT cycle, it's all about psychology too, isn't it?
Very much so. What's called QT, not really tightening, is basically done to create space for future QE. It acknowledges rates will likely hit zero again, needing balance sheet expansion as the main tool.
So it's an ongoing cycle of interventions, not fundamental health.
Pretty much. Unless something drastically improves, rates will likely keep going lower, raising uncomfortable questions about traditional monetary policy, especially now everyone's used to QEs.
Okay, let's shift to Turkey. Their economic challenges seem incredibly persistent.
They really are. Inflation, while slightly better than the 62% peak last July, is still an incredibly high 33.5% in July 2025.
Prices up by a third year on year. The finance minister targets 20% by year end, but cumulatively.
Prices have more than doubled every couple of years. It's the second worst in the G20, even worse than Ukraine's 14%. And food inflation is almost 30%, hitting the poorest hardest.
And interest rates, 43%.
That's incredibly high,
Yeah.
reaching loan sharks levels. It stifles borrowing for companies limiting investment and for consumers curbing spending. Highest in the G20, only Venezuela is worse globally.
Plus, the currency keeps crumbling. The lira is down 23% against the dollar in the last year, from 33 to 41 lira USD.
And a staggering drop from 7 lira USD 5 years ago. This constant devaluation leads to a total loss of confidence. People prefer holding euros or dollars, dollarization. It fragments the economy.
And they consistently run a trade deficit, importing more than exporting.
Yep, a constant drain on cash reserves. In July, the deficit was $6.4 billion.
And now U.S. tariffs add more pressure, 15% on all Turkish imports.
That impacts 6.2% of their total exports, makes them more expensive, likely reducing demand. And given Trump's focus on stopping trade with Russia,
Turkey's continued friendly relations and trade with Russia, a top 10 partner, could put them further on the U.S. radar.
it certainly could. Potential for more trade friction there.
And all this makes attracting foreign investment incredibly difficult.
Exactly. FDI is at a low level. With a devaluing currency, high risks. Attracting capital needed for industry and growth is a major challenge. It's a classic vicious circle.
Okay, finally on the economic front, let's turn to the escalating U.S. debt crisis.
Right. A sobering new milestone. U.S. federal debt now stands at $37 trillion.
Up from $35.5 trillion at the end of fiscal year 2024.
And the deficit for fiscal 2025, just up to June, is $1.33 trillion. That's already worse than all of 2024 and projected to be $1.9 trillion for the full year.
A persistent, accelerating overspending problem.
And the interest payments are soaring, projected to be $1 trillion this year.
$1 trillion just on interest.
Yep, consuming 20% of all federal tax money collected, about $5 trillion annually. A dramatic jump from $300 billion in 2020-2021.
Trump's been criticizing Fed Chair Powell for not cutting rates because of this, right?
Openly, arguing high rates make the government spend much, much more on interest. He suggested a 3% cut from 4.5% down to 1.5%.
And massive borrowing is still ahead.
Absolutely. The Treasury plans to borrow over $1 trillion in Q4 2025 and another $590 billion in Q1 2026.
Partly to refill the government's checking account, the Treasury General account.
Right. They want a much higher minimum balance now, $800 billion,
Mhm.
compared to just $100 billion a decade ago.
But the fear is, can they find enough lenders, especially with weak bond auctions?
That's the core fear. The government's huge borrowing need, combined with weak demand for bonds, could force the U.S. to offer even higher interest rates.
Making the debt even more expensive, worsening the crisis, a potential spiral.
Exactly. It's a precarious situation.
Okay, it's clear these economic pressures are mounting globally. It's a really complex web.
And as we've seen, these economic pressures are almost always intertwined with geopolitical tensions and military conflicts. Let's shift now to the political and military landscape. Let's start with Myanmar, which has quietly become a significant regional proxy war.
4 years after the coup.
Myanmar remains engulfed in relentless violence. Some 82,000 lives lost, 3.2 million displaced. A truly devastating human cost.
And the central government, General Min Aung Hlaing's commission, controls just a fraction of the country, like a fifth.
Just about. Vast areas are dominated by this complex patchwork of separatist strongholds, each with its own political goals. Kachin Independence Army seeking autonomy, a Rakhine army pushing for a self-governed Rakhine nation.
Plus militias in Chin State, Karini groups fighting for ethnic homelands.
It's deeply fractured,
Yeah.
decentralized, makes any unified solution incredibly challenging.
And then there's the People's Defense Force, the PDF, formed by the exiled civilian government.
Yes, operating across central and southern Myanmar, fighting to overthrow the military and establish a federal democracy. But its rapid growth has strained relations with some older ethnic militias, complicating the rebel alliance.
And this power vacuum has turned Myanmar into a hub for illicit activities: drugs, trafficking, weapons smuggling.
Tragically, yes, creating a deeply entrenched illicit economy. In some areas, governance is broken down so completely, the national currency isn't even used anymore. It shows the sheer chaos on the ground.
So let's look at the foreign powers involved. China's role seems particularly complex.
Deeply complex. With huge investments and strategic stakes, China plays this balancing act. It supplies military hardware to the central government, helping the junta.
But simultaneously turns a blind eye to Chinese-made weapons flowing to rebel factions, like the United Wa State Army supplying the Arakan Ufi.
Exactly. This ambiguity has led to an unspoken rule. Most armed groups carefully avoid targeting Chinese assets like pipelines and ports, a kind of transactional understanding.
And China's main goal is entrenching its strategic corridor through Myanmar.
That's the core objective, and paradoxically, it's emerged as the only external power able to broker peace, negotiating truces in northern Shan State recently.
What about India? Trying to copy China's strategy but struggling.
Largely stumbling, yes. India's main focus is securing its northeastern border from insurgent groups operating out of Myanmar. They've quietly cooperated with Myanmar's military, sharing intel, doing cross-border ops near Manipur.
But they lack strong ties with the ethnic militias and don't have much economic leverage.
Correct, which limits their ability to influence events or broker broader peace.
And the U.S. approach is different again, mostly non-lethal aid to the exiled government.
Officially, yes. Limited to non-lethal aid for the exiled government under which the PDF operates, though covert assistance is widely presumed.
Washington's also urged Thailand to get more involved.
They have, but Thailand remains understandably cautious. Risk of instability spilling over, plus China's major strategic interests in the region.
Okay, let's talk about that strategic corridor for China. Why is Myanmar so vital?
It's China's only immediate neighbor offering direct overland access to the Indian Ocean. It's a strategically vital bypass.
Avoiding the contested South China Sea and the congested Strait of Malacca, where the U.S. Navy could disrupt shipping.
Precisely. This 1,700-kilometer corridor is absolutely vital for exporting Chinese goods and importing critical fuels and minerals.
They've built oil and gas pipelines already, from the Bay of Bengal to Yunnan.
Yes, with ambitious plans for connecting highways and high-speed rail. Key projects include the huge $7.3 billion deepwater port at Gyeongju and a $1.3 billion special economic zone.
This isn't just about trade, it's fundamental to China's economic and energy security.
Absolutely.
Historically, though, Myanmar's military wasn't always comfortable with relying so heavily on China for arms.
No, they're fiercely nationalistic. They grew uneasy, especially after 1988 when China sold them over $1 billion in hardware. So to reduce reliance, Myanmar built defense ties with Russia.
Acquiring MiG-29s, Mi-35 helicopter gunships, things now crucial for the government against rebels.
Right. But Russia's continued support now is, well, unclear, potentially diminished due to their focus on the war in Ukraine.
So how has the U.S. responded to all this? Sanctions on the junta?
Sanctions, yes. And significantly, a massive new U.S. consulate complex, about $248 million, is being built in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Which is widely believed to be about expanding intelligence capabilities, potentially supplying intel to rebel factions in Myanmar.
That's the belief.
Yeah.
And there are these unproven but persistent claims of U.S. plans for a large supply base in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, to support insurgent groups like the Arakan Army and Chin National Front.
And even talk of a no-fly zone over Rakhine State.
Those are the rumors. If true, these efforts strategically aim to put direct pressure on China's vital overland corridor.
This is where it gets really interesting. If these U.S. plans play out,
Chinese interest will inevitably clash directly and profoundly with American designs. Myanmar becomes a critical, potentially volatile arena in these evolving regional power dynamics.
the proxy war there is a complex example of how global powers operate behind the scenes. Okay, let's connect this to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Diplomatic efforts and battlefield realities seem to be clashing starkly.
Absolutely. And first, an important update on the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Italian police have arrested the first suspect.
Oh, really? Who?
Sergei K., identified as a Ukrainian citizen, allegedly on the sailboat that placed the explosives back in September 2022. He's being extradited to Germany now. A significant development.
Definitely. Now, what about the casualty data from Ukraine? It seems highly contested.
Extremely. A Russian hacker group, Killnet, claims they got into Ukrainian military computers and found a list of 1.7 million Ukrainian soldiers killed and wounded. They even published names and addresses.
1.7 million, that sounds incredibly high.
Yeah.
And impossible to verify, obviously.
Right. And it stands in stark contrast to President Zelensky's claims, 30,000 casualties in January, 46,000 in April-May.
Are there other sources, independent studies?
Some, based on sample groups. One sample indicated only 11% of Ukrainian soldiers who joined in 2022 are still serving. 91% either wounded or dead, reportedly 81% killed in that specific sample.
Devastating numbers, even if from a sample. What about the Russian side?
Conversely, in a similar cracking study, 79% of Russian soldiers were still serving, 21% wounded or killed. Again, not fully accurate, but these figures hint at the immense and possibly asymmetric human costs.
Ukrainian Commander Syrsky acknowledged a severe manpower shortage, said they're running low on recruits.
He did. And his proposed solution to match Russia: deploy 15,000 robots on the front lines.
15,000 robots. A startling vision of future warfare.
Indeed. Now, moving to the peace process, former President Trump engaged in what some call no BS diplomacy, directly calling Putin.
And he claims significant progress, that Russians are now talking to Ukrainians about details to stop the fighting.
That's his claim. And Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov indicated Russia is open to upgrading the level of the negotiations and the negotiators.
Which could mean high-level talks, Putin and Zelensky themselves, with Putin as chief negotiator to get around Ukrainian laws.
Potentially. But a core sticking point emerged immediately. Lavrov made it clear, any resolution must ensure rights for ethnic Russians, Russian speakers, the Orthodox Church, Russian culture, are respected and enshrined in law in post-conflict Ukraine.
And Zelensky rejected that outright. One culture, one language, Ukraine and Ukrainian.
Immediately, setting up a profound, seemingly intractable diplomatic standoff. Deep ideological differences there.
And the security guarantee issue is another huge barrier.
Critical. Lavrov says the framework was basically resolved in Istanbul in 2022. UN Security Council members as core guarantors, maybe others joining. Key conditions: no foreign troops in Ukraine, and a veto power for guarantors, including Russia.
So Russia gets a veto on any future troop deployments into Ukraine.
That was the framework. Lavrov dismisses Western ideas of a NATO but not NATO Article 5 protection as nonsense. Clear red line against any NATO-like military presence.
But European and Ukrainian leaders are pushing for exactly that, something resembling Article 5, possibly NATO troops, building up Ukraine's military.
Vigorously pushing for it. These are explicit red flags for Russia, which sees NATO expansion into Ukraine as an existential threat. Zelensky even rejected China as a guarantor, saying Ukraine doesn't need them.
Italy's PM Meloni is reportedly okay with this NATO-light model.
Reportedly comfortable with it, yes, even though critics call it undignified, given the clear Russian opposition.
And Trump. After meeting Putin, he seems to get that these guarantees are unacceptable to Russia.
Appears so, yet he engages with Europeans and Ukrainians, throwing them a bone with rhetoric. Critics say this adds legitimacy to an unworkable discourse.
And he's trying to distance himself from the war, encouraging Europe to buy U.S. weapons and ship them to Ukraine, the European pipeline.
That seems to be his strategy. Outsource containment of Russia to Europe allows him to avoid blame for failures, maintaining he did not cut off the flow of weaponry. He also said he doesn't want to be at the first Putin-Zelensky meeting. Let them solve this one.
European leaders seem to be playing for time, hoping to keep the U.S. involved, maybe turn Trump against Putin.
That appears to be the dynamic. Their stance reflects a deep desire to keep Americans militarily engaged in Europe, while some dissenting voices are emerging, like Owen Matthews calling not talking to Russia a catastrophic mistake.
European elites, especially in larger states, seem less afraid of Russia itself than the end of NATO and a U.S. withdrawal.
That's the analysis. It would challenge the whole European construction and their political positions. Germany's Merz is struggling to get support for sending troops to Ukraine under the Macron-Starmer plan. Estonia, though, is ready to send 150.
Okay, what about the battlefield realities? It sounds like a war of attrition.
Fundamentally,
Yeah.
Russians are using sophisticated tactics, avoiding frontal assaults, creating cauldrons for favorable casualty ratios. They're not rushing territory, but grinding down Ukrainian forces.
Key areas like Kupiansk, Pokrovsk, Kostiantynivka are being encircled. Russians entered Kostiantynivka.
Confirmed. Logistics are being cut off. More territory will inevitably fall, making any peace deal even more painful for Ukraine.
And Ukrainian forces are suffering. Lack of infantry, hollowed out.
Enormously. Unable to stem the tide or reverse gains, public opinion in Ukraine shows declining support for the war. Around 70% want to settle.
Plus, the U.S. is slowly withdrawing support, unlike WW3 when U.S. troops turned the tide.
Right, which makes Ukraine's situation look doomed to continued deterioration without a dramatic shift. In contrast, the Russian army has learned, adapted, become more effective, larger since 2022. Improving capabilities, minimizing casualties with clever tactics.
So without a diplomatic solution, Europe faces a much bigger crisis. Struggling economies, falling productivity, lagging technology.
That's the outlook. A frontline collapse could trigger political chaos in Ukraine, force Russia to move further, leading to an indefinite crisis. A serious Putin-Zelensky meeting is unlikely. Their positions are too far apart.
A peace deal would need a change of power in Kyiv. Zelensky can't make the needed concessions.
Realistically, yes. And this whole situation damages NATO significantly. Europe likely ends up with egg all over their face.
But Trump's efforts to normalize relations with Russia are seen as a positive. Direct communication between nuclear powers is crucial.
It's a notable positive for global safety, yes. Even with the suspicion he's outsourcing hostility to Europe.
Now, what about Lindsey Graham's efforts, designating Russia a state sponsor of terrorism?
He's actively pushing that, citing the alleged kidnapping of 19,000 Ukrainian children linked to that controversial Melania letter narrative.
Such a designation would destroy diplomacy forever.
That's the analysis. It would escalate things dramatically. But Russian authorities claim that when asked for the list of 19,000 kids, Ukraine provided only 319, which Russia started tracking.
Calling the scale of Graham's claim into question.
Exactly. Adds another layer of complexity.
And there was misinformation about Ukraine's EU accession. Reports Trump pressed Orban to drop his bloc.
Yeah, Bloomberg reported that. But the Hungarian foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó, explicitly denied it. No such communication at all. Highlights the spread of unverified info.
Finally, those rumors about Ursula von der Leyen being asked to leave a White House meeting by Trump because she's not a leader of a sovereign nation.
Intriguing rumors, corroborated by a German MP. It's true. It reflects significant perceived disrespect, like past incidents with China and Erdogan. Germany disputes it, asserting her representation. Shows the delicate nature of diplomacy.
Okay, so looking at all this, what stands out to you? The shifting dynamics are clearly reshaping global alliances.
Profoundly. But beyond the big geopolitical chess match, let's turn our attention to some specific, critical developments within the United States.
Okay, U.S. news, starting with the Middle East conflict.
Overnight, Israeli forces began their advance on Gaza City once again, signifying renewed intensity. Around 60,000 more reservists mobilized for this expansion.
And things are escalating in the West Bank, too. Territory seizure operations, widespread protests.
Yes, operations continued, leading to increasingly widespread protests over the past few weeks, tensions rising across the region.
Okay, domestically. A case of plague in California.
In El Dorado County, yes. One case, believed contracted from a flea bite while camping near Lake Tahoe. The person is recovering at home.
Not unprecedented for the area, but still concerning. Last case was 2020.
A reminder for public health vigilance.
And the White House announced a review of visa holders, 55 million of them.
Roughly 55 million, yes. A review for potential violations of immigration policy. The comment, made responding to an AP question, indirectly confirms a staggering 55 million legal visa holders.
Which implies the true number of illegal immigrants might be vastly higher than previously thought.
That's the implication. Suggests a far greater scope to the nation's immigration challenges.
Also, the Trump administration launched an official TikTok account, with Trump himself saying, "I am your voice."
They did, which is noteworthy given the app's uncertain future in the U.S., the ban on government devices, and Trump's own extensions of the sale deadline for ByteDance.
Complex political calculus behind social media engagement there.
Definitely.
And a Chinese national sentenced for weapons smuggling to North Korea.
Shinwang Wen, 42, living in Southern California, sentenced to 8 years federal prison. Prosecutors said he acted as an illegal foreign agent, shipping U.S. firearms, ammo, sensitive tech through Long Beach using false documents.
Rerouting a shipment through Hong Kong to North Korea?
Yes. He even bought a firearms business in Houston in 2023, seemingly to move weapons to California. Tried to get a civilian airplane engine, thermal imaging systems too.
And he originally entered on a student visa and overstayed.
Entered in 2012, visa expired, he stayed. A long pattern of illicit activity.
Finally, this global movement to renounce ties with the CCP.
Yes, a significant phenomenon. A peaceful global movement reached a historic milestone. Over 450 million people have now publicly renounced all ties to the CCP and its affiliated organizations.
450 million? That's huge.
It is. This grassroots effort has been ongoing for over 20 years. Started back in 2004 by Falun Gong practitioners, the spiritual group persecuted by the regime. It's a major internal and external pushback against party control.
And joining the CCP involves that oath. Dedicating your life, can't leave unless expelled.
Right. Choosing to withdraw means becoming a social outcast, even a threat inside China. Huge personal risk.
So the movement lets people use aliases to protect their identity while breaking free symbolically.
Exactly. An innovative form of resistance.
And this movement is tied to the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party publication.
Closely tied. That series by the Epoch Times in 2004 offered a comprehensive analysis of the CCP's nature and history, acting as a catalyst for this global wave of withdrawals.
And there's a global petition, too.
Yes, the Global Service Center for Quitting the CCP launched the NCCP petition campaign in 2020. Gathering support from over 5 million people in the free world standing in solidarity.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a vast amount of ground today, from China's economic maneuvers and global trade tensions
to the complexities of proxy wars, the Ukraine conflict, and vital domestic U.S. news.
It really shows how deeply interconnected these global forces are. Strategic gold hoarding impacts global finance.
Tariffs ripple across economies worldwide. And the profound human cost of ongoing conflicts reshapes everything.
It certainly paints a vivid picture of a world in profound flux. Powerful undercurrents of economic shifts and geopolitical realignments are reshaping our future.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. Given this intertwining nature of global events and those clear payback periods we see across economies,
how might the continued absence of a diplomatic resolution in Europe further accelerate global economic reordering?
and what are the long-term implications for the stability of existing alliances and power structures? It's definitely something to mull over.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about and enhanced your understanding of these critical global dynamics. If you found this discussion insightful, please do consider liking this deep dive and subscribing to our channel.
And if you feel our work adds significant value to your understanding of the world, we invite you to support us by donating on our GoFundMe page. Your support really helps us continue providing these detailed analyses and vital insights.
Thanks for tuning in to the deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration into the issues that truly matter.